Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Vienna Wireless Introduction to Amateur Radio and how amateur radio will convert and support the CERT program. Then the pictures that you're going to see come from the Vienna Wireless, that come from our club, and I'm going to be selling our club because it's one of the most advanced and gets you a lot of eclectic experiences in amateur radio. Let's see who we got here. Oh, there it is. How amateur radio will complement, and we're not going to replace, or we're not going to teach radio techniques, at least tonight, but we're going to show you how the amateur radio community can help support the programs that you would have in CERT, and that how you can advance your own proficiency in using the radio. Your guest tonight, your host tonight, myself, Pete Hadley, and I will be assisted by Brendan O'Neill, and our videographer is Ray Anderson. So, yeah, a little applause there. All right, thank you very much. Thank you. To start off with, we're going to just take a real brief look at what happened in Puerto Rico. We had one of our club members was part of an assemblage of people that volunteered to go down to Puerto Rico. Of the number, was about 450 people volunteered. There were about 50 that were accepted and about 25 deployed to Puerto Rico. There is our man on the left, Craig McVeigh, CERT 86, and he was down there along with his cohort here that I don't know the man on the right, but he showed up in the picture. This is what the ops center looked like, where they had the radio communications, and each one of those positions has a radio, and they would be handling the communications, mostly health and welfare, as opposed to buildings crumbling and trees falling down and the cars being blown away. So they were doing the health and welfare part of it. Now, we're talking CERT, we're talking about things that are going to happen in our community that we want to be prepared for. How can we get ready to expect the unexpected? Well, let's see, Brendan, let's see what we can do. There we go. How do you get ready for all these things? You know, we talk about getting ready for something, but how do you get ready for this stuff? Do you just sit down, you're going to plan for an earthquake? Well, this is not a good place to plan for an earthquake, but maybe we could do a hurricane. But we're talking about CERT, we're talking about a nationwide program, we're talking about bringing in communications into that program. So let's see, what is it? What do we want to do? Well, that's kind of a takeoff on practice, practice, practice. Well, we're going to prepare, and we're going to include practice into the prepare part. Preparation, partially, is education. This is one of the classes that we had on soldering and on building a piece of radio equipment. So, are you going to sit there with a handy-talkie and talk about building something or educating? Not directly, but education is going to support the experience that you have with the handy-talkie. What's another area? Building. Now you see this radio in the back there. Part of getting ready for this catastrophe, the unexpected, the unknown, is getting prepared, building this radio. And we'll take a look at this in a little bit later in more detail. But this is something that Brendan put together. It's his go kit. You grab it, you run out, you set it on a particular site, and you have a complete radio station. Incoming, outgoing, powered by its portable power, you're ready to go with a complete station. The contesting, now that sounds like, how can contesting be preparing you for this some kind of a disaster? If you've ever been on a contest and listened to a contest, there's going to be hundreds of radio stations out there trying to make talking with each other. there's going to be a lot of noise. There's going to be signals way in the background that are going to be difficult to hear. There's going to be a lot of noise, a lot of static. Contesting teaches you, trains your ear to sort out the words, the voices. You're going to hear one voice, and I need your station, and your voice is back there in the background. I'm going to be able to pick out your voice from the 20 other voices that are in there until I can hear your call sign and the report that you have and get you mine, and then we log another one. Contesting sounds like fun. It is fun, but it's also training you for what we want to do. Now, what do we got here? This particular place teaches you how to improvise. There is an exercise or a project called a de-expedition. A group of people, maybe 15 or 20, get together, jump on a boat with, of course, a lot of preparation, go out to various places around the world and set up and operate. This happens to be a location in the Pacific Ocean, and there's a its own, well, the interesting thing is it's claimed by the People's Republic of China. They think that that's their rock. People's Republic of China, Taiwan thinks it's their rock. The other one is, it popped off of there. I had, oh, click it again. It'll be on there. One more time. There it is, the Philippines. The Philippines think it's their rock. So they have to get all the permission to go out there. And this is the shack that they built on this piece of rock. It's considered a country because the rules for the expeditions set down some definitions, and this particular rock meets those definitions. So they set it up, a little generator out there, sit out in the middle, well, not in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, but they sit out a ways offshore, and that counts as a country. And you can see they've been out there a number of times. I think 94 and what have we got here? 95, 97, and 2007. They've been back there 4 times because it's a rare contact. So if you're in the ham radio community into making long distance or rare contacts, then this would be one that you would be waiting for with bated breath to get on that mic and make the contact. And they'll be there for maybe 2 weeks, and they'll be operating most likely 24 hours a day. And it's just mayhem on there because there's a number of people that are trying to get in and make that contact. Preparations, emergency conditions, just operating, and that's what we could expect. First off, in CERT would be to do an operation where we were under simulated emergency conditions. So you'd have your radio, you'd set up a little network, you could go out and do your windshield survey, report back using your HT, your handy talkie, and come on back and make it, get it recorded in. These are a number of things that we do in the amateur radio community to prepare for the next emergency, whatever it happens to be. The hospital assistance, the first one on there, Fairfax County, or Fairfax Inova Hospital, had to change over their telephone system. They set it up to where 8 o'clock at night, the regular telephone system went down, and it was going to be down for 12 hours till 8 o'clock the next morning while they put in the new telephone system. So we went out, and at each one of the nurses' stations, we had an operator with a handy talkie, and he was there relaying the information just like it was a telephone, well, as close as you can simulate like it was a telephone. And so for 12 hours, we stayed there and passed on the communication. We just worked the Marine Corps Marathon, and there's about 125, 130 people that are out there that help control, provide the net control, the medical control, organizational administration for the operation of the 30,000 runners, plus how many thousands of people in support. That's one of the jobs that we do. You can see where now there's a connection between picking up your HT and talking to a medical officer, or picking up your HT and talking back to a headquarters, or somebody that's you're waiting for them to bring you some aid equipment, or gasoline or something like that. All of these things are building on your experience, and they're not one where we're going to go in and we're going to do a CERT class, but we're going to do amateur radio under the umbrella of the amateur radio, all of these different experiences that we can be looking for. There we go. I guess that was a duplicate. Go ahead and hit it again. Oh, that's Scarborough Reef, the name of it. Okay. Preparation is our big exercise of the year called Field Day. Once a year, we pack up everything that we've got, put it in the cars and trailers and trucks, and go out to some remote site. And we operate out there for 24 hours a day. Not 24 hours a day, for a 24-hour period. And if you could show me the next slide there we go. It's our annual emergency radio communications exercise. The key thing here is that we do not have any municipal services at all. That we bring everything out. We bring our food out, we bring our gasoline, our generators, we have our porta potties out there, bring out some big circus tents, and we set up all the tents, and in these tents we have individual radio stations, and usually we have 4 different bands that we operate on. We operate on 20 meters, 40 meters, both phone and Morse code on CW, and so that would be the 4 different tents that we have. We also sometimes we have the VHF, and we track satellites. So as the satellites come over, we track them with an antenna that you see there in the back. We'll get to in a minute, but we just track it, and it's up for about maybe around 15 minutes, and then it goes over the horizon, and then we wait for another cycle to come by, and we shoot a signal up to it, and it bounces off. Somebody hears it, they shoot a signal back up to it, and we communicate through this satellite, as opposed to communicating, say, with the ground bounce between the Earth and the ionosphere and so on. So a 24-hour operation. It's nice to operate at nighttime. The best part about nighttime is when the sun comes up in the morning. And pretty soon someone else is coming in, you're going to get relieved, and it's going to start to warm up, and things are going to dry out. And you saw that lady that was operating there. It's nice. It's fun to do it at night because it's very quiet. You're all alone, but the sun coming up too, and then the cooks are out there cooking bacon and eggs, and we have a good time. But during this 24-hour operation, what are we doing? We're making contacts. We're talking to different people, developing our skills in drawing out of the airways the contacts that we need, the communication, the skills to actually pull out the information that we want. There are several modes in the amateur radio community, not that we would be interested in CERT, but I'm going to sell a little bit about amateur radio. And that is, we have the radio telephone, we have Morse code, we have digital, which is using a keyboard and your response comes up on the screen, kind of like an internet. And then we also have amateur radio video. In our club, we haven't done anything with the video, but we are very active in the other 3 modes of communication. We just haven't got around to it. What is preparation? Preparation is getting on the air. We find that people will buy a radio, they'll take the exams, they'll sit there and they'll look at that radio, and they can't push the push to talk button. It just won't go in, and if it goes in, the words don't come out. It's just so difficult. That's why we have the Get on the Air program, because we will have coaches that will sit there and help you get on the air, help you push the button and make it work. This is the go-to site that you see at our field day, and that's the first place that when any visitors come, we bring them in there, we introduce them to getting on the air. We'll put them down in a chair and hand them a mic and say, let's see what happens. And we have some young kids there, and believe it or not, these kids are really good, at learning what it is. Another way to prepare, and you'll see this, they don't use a radiogram, but they have a regular federal form that we use. Pardon me?
Marsgrams.
Marsgram. And so regardless of the paper that it's written on, at every field day we send out messages because it stresses the national traffic system in getting messages across the country. So we collect these up, we turn them into the system, and then it goes just like you would expect a chain. A single radio station would put it into a collecting agency, would go to maybe halfway across the US and would be retransmitted to the West Coast, and then it would go down to the person that actually delivers the message. Mobile. Well, what could be better than having a radio in your car where you can get up and drive around? You can drive to the different locations, and it's a complete radio station. Of course, it has the battery in it. You can charge it with the your car, and it's just a complete radio station. There you can see the antenna up, and it pops on down, and so that way you can get it in the garage. If it's up and it doesn't come down, when you go in the garage, everybody knows it. So it makes a lot of racket. And it seems like the wife is always in the kitchen when it's up and you go into the garage. And you know, oh, home dear, yeah, dinner ready, crash, crash. Another way, instead of doing the satellites, the amateur satellites, AMSAC, we can do a moon bounce. And we went out to the Warrenton Airport and set up our transmitter with a really long antenna. It's probably about 20 feet long, and it has a lot of director elements similar to this Yagi that we see back here, except it's had about 15 or 20 elements. We would point it towards the moon, and we would send the signal up to the moon, and then it would reflect off of the moon, and somebody would hear it, hopefully. And if they hear it, then they'll send it back, and we will have made a contact by bouncing that signal off of the moon. So it doesn't, once again, it doesn't go around the Earth by bouncing it. It goes up to the moon and back on down. We help Boy Scouts. And now they're going to be a source of assistance of some sort to the community, and we help them with their various merit badges. And the merit badges, the three of them that they really work on that we can help with are electricity, radio, and electronics. And then the one that you see on the bottom is for Morse code, or Morse code interpreter, and it's well, it's new to my Boy Scout days. But if you speak a foreign language, you get to put these different stripes on that indicate the foreign language that you know. Well, it says preparation is balloon flights. That's a bit of a stretch. Let's say it is a diversion. So this is fun. And if you take a look at the picture there, we launched these balloons, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them. If you notice in preparation for the balloon launch, if you see the girls with the red circles around their hands, they have on rubber gloves. Everybody that handles a balloon has on a rubber glove so that you don't contaminate the outside of the balloon with something foreign, such as oil from your skin. This balloon, when we launch it, goes up about 120,000 feet, which is about 20 miles. It's pretty cold up there. So when it gets up there, the balloon skin gets cold, but where you touched it with the oil gets colder, and it causes the balloon to rupture prematurely. So that's why we handle it with rubber gloves, so that we don't get this on our skin. You can see them there. They're filling the balloon. The balloon gets a little bit larger than that, but when it bursts, it gets about 5 times that. This is what I'm going to call it the balloon train looks like. We have the balloon at the top, and below the balloon is a parachute. And well, the balloon there, it says that the balloon is going to go about 5 times. That balloon, when it bursts, would fill this room. It's bigger than that. Generally, it starts off at about 10, 12 feet in diameter, and then it goes up and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. You ask the question, what happens if an airplane flies into it? Well, you notice there that they have the 50-pound test line. So if an airplane hits it, this test line will just break instantaneously. The balloon goes up, The payload comes down, it has a parachute on it, parachute deploys, comes on down. In the payload, when we track it using what we call APRS, and it's a tracking system that has a GPS on it, and the GPS is in the foam, and I'll show you this foam box in just a few minutes. Has that information on there, and it's constantly sending this out. It sends us information back to our cars, where it's translated into an image that goes on the map. Here you'll see a map, and it has a little around the world an 80-day balloon icon that dances across the map, puts a line out there. So now we, yeah, whoops. We'll watch this whoops, and I don't know how to stop it, so we'll watch this. That's me in the red jacket. Icy fingers. There's the red jacket. Not that you really care. It's swinging back and forth. The payload is swinging back and forth under the balloon. You can see the balloon just shredded itself. There's nothing there. Notice all the clear spaces that balloon can land?
It's going to mess up your one.
I don't know who the optimist was, put the ladder up on that tree there. Notice the black hole on the side of it. There's a camera there that shoots horizontally, and then there's another one that shoots straight down vertically. And what I always am amused at is it says, the sign on the side says, harmless amateur radio experiment. I think there might be a phone number. Now, if it wasn't a harmless amateur radio experiment, what would you put on the side of it? Probably harmless amateur radio experiment. But anyway, we got it back. We've always got them back. We pulled them out of the Potomac River. We pulled them out of fields. Got one in a ballpark where they had all these tall lights up there. Missed all of them. Was right underneath the tree. You just walk up and pick it up and carry it back. And then from there we take and not develop, but we collect the pictures and put them online. And that was some of the pictures that you saw going up there. That it's a lot of fun. It's a whole day operation. Well, plus the preparation for it. Before we launch, one of the things that we do is we go out to Dulles Airport, phone the Weather Bureau out there, get the weather reports, put them into a computer program, and it tells us where we tell it where we're going to launch, and it sort of tells us where we're going to pick it up. Let's see where some of the travels this has gone. You recognize this probably as Washington, D.C., and let's see where some of the highlights that we have here. National Airport. I probably shouldn't say this, but we did travel through the controlled airspace at National Airport one time. The computer program didn't say that we were going to, it said we were going to miss it, but we went right on through it. And there's the Capitol building. And this is, of course, one of the pictures on its way down. And it landed, it's funny when it came down because it just tracked right over that river. It was coming from west to east. When it got to the river, It just turned and it just went right down the river and went right down all the curves. And of course, it's dropping all the time. And then pretty soon, it disappeared off of our, say, off of our radar screen, off of our GPS, and landed in the river. We had to go knocking on doors to houses to get a kayak to go out in the river and recover the payload that we had. And that happened to be one that we contacted, or I think one of the schools contacted us, and the kids had a proposal. They wanted to know whether or not seeds that had been exposed to ultraviolet lights and to a higher radiation would grow differently than if it was just on the ground. So they set up this experiment where they had controlled samples. I don't know how many, don't remember how many seed packets they had, but some of them were locked in the teacher's drawer, and then we had some that were inside the payload, which is about this square, a cube about like that, and we had some that were taped on the outside just in a plastic envelope. And we sent it up and then came back down. We returned it to the school. Unfortunately, there's no real ending to the story because we never heard back how the seeds fared. But we do have that capability to do that and to help people out if they have an experiment. It's not inexpensive because we have to use helium, and the helium right now is getting very expensive, but it's fun. And it gives us a chance to use our experience and our education to track this, to actually put together the project. Can you use it in CERT? Probably not. But can you use the experience that you have with it? Absolutely. There'll be applications for it all the time, not direct, but indirect. We went out to Virginia Run Elementary School and contacted NASA, and you know they had the International Space Stations continually going around. And this particular time we set it up so that the kids at the school could talk to one of the astronauts, and this happened to be Sunny Williams, who was up there, and it was her turn to go around. And flip it over to the next one there. Okay, so she was NA1SS was her call sign, and our club call sign is K4HTA. So we went and communicated back and forth. We have about 15 minutes. So you can set your watch by the time she comes over the horizon. And so then we were sitting there and waiting for her to come. And so the kids were then rehearsing what they were going to say. They had a number of kids that had little 3x5 cards that had their question on it. And when you see this first lad right there, "My name is Alan. How high up are you?" It just keeps ringing in my head all the time. And so, of course, Sunny answers back, tells them how up she was. Some of the questions were, how do you eat up there? What's it like? What's being weightless, and so on. And so for 15 minutes, the kids are querying the astronaut as she's flying overhead. If you look down in the lower right-hand corner there, you'll see an insert there, and that's an antenna that we put up, and that tracks the space station as it goes by. So if you watch it, it'll just click, click, and then when the signal starts to fade down, it clicks over until it picks up a good strong signal. So for 15 minutes, we're trying to find out how much an astronaut weighs in zero gravity. And then pretty soon it just fades away, and we say goodbye. And Bob Ryan was out there, and they had a couple other astronauts that were in the auditorium. And the whole school was in this big auditorium, and it was up on the screen there. Now, we were talking about voice and how that's one of the modes. This happens to be another mode, and that's Morse code. Probably wouldn't work directly. However, we do have a device here that I'm going to play for you in a minute that does use Morse code. It doesn't require high speed, but it does just require the recognition of it. And this happens to be an electronic here, and I'll go ahead and let's see how that works. If you look at one side of that paddle, if you touch one side of the paddle, it will send dits continually. Dit, 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 dit. Forever. If you look at the other side of that paddle, it will send you DAWs. And that's all that you need to transmit War of the Worlds. You can transmit the Bible with a dit and a da. You can transmit any kind of written communication with just a simple dit and a simple da. That's the part that I think is most fascinating, is how much you can
act. Books. I've only been a ham for 3.5 years, but I dive into things pretty deeply when I get into them, and I'm passionate about them. The handbook, and specifically the operating manual, I recommend for any new ham operator together. Just build a good library. They're really good reference books. The operating manual more so than the handbook. The handbook is kind of a reference book for like deep dive, like how to build circuits and electronics information and things like that. The operating manual, if you flip through it, feel free to pick it up and flip through it, talks about all the different things that you can do in amateur radio, and it's sort of, it tells you what websites to go to and where to get more detailed information about all the different things that you can do in amateur radio. It's a really good book. Right now, ARRL has a bundle sale price available at their bookstore. I think it's 25% off as Christmas approaches, and it might even get better as Christmas gets closer. And it's bundled by topic. So if you just look at the store, you can get antenna topics, you can get satellite topics, you can get digital mode topics. And then the other two books, the one he's looking at right now is a class that's offered by ARRL, Introduction to Emergency Communications. That's a pretty good course. We offered that course through the club, and we probably will again in the future. I'm working on getting my ARRL instructor certification as well, so that's there. And then the public service handbook is just very much like the operating manual. It's a basic overview of all the different things that you can do as an amateur radio operator in public service. Working with the Red Cross, working with FEMA, working with your local emergency operations centers. Yeah, so it would be really focused towards CERT's use of radios in certain aspects. Moving closer this way, there's just some examples of an antenna analyzer. I think that if you're going to be an operator, if you're going to use your radios often, you really should have an antenna analyzer. Yep, it's the big breath. Yeah, feel free to pick it up if you want. You can't really hurt it. It's been dropped and beer has been spilt on it, and it still works well.
Alcohol abuse.
So it's got UHF, VHF, and HF antenna inputs, and you basically hook it up to your antenna, and it tells you where it's resonant. And if you can lengthen it like a dipole antenna, you can shorten it or lengthen it. And that's how you would tune the antenna. There's a couple other different methods for different kinds of antennas. Here's an example of a small, lightweight, that's pretty light. That battery will run this entire box for a good couple of hours at least. I have much larger batteries that will run this box for days on end, but that's just an example of a lightweight. So like the Marine Corps Marathon, if you take your HT with you, and you're a roamer on the Marine Corps Marathon, you take a battery like that and you put it in a fanny pack or a backpack and you just have it hooked up to this, that'll run this radio as a net control operator for a week. So like 80% duty cycle for a week. That is called a power gate. So there, I have the newer version of it in here that used to be in this box. What you do with this thing is you take commercial power into here, like your power supply feed would go into here, and then out to a distribution block that you would feed all your other stuff with, and then a battery here, like that battery here. And if my commercial power dies or my generator runs out of gas, seamlessly without interruption switches over to the battery. The new one is about half the size and offers a solar charger input, and through software you can program it to do a bunch of different voltages for different kinds of batteries and things like that. So it's an instant switch. We've tested it quite a bit and it works. The two radios there are FRS radios. You're familiar with those through CERT. CERT program in Fairfax County has like 124 FRS radios, I think, in their cache. Moving this way is a DMR, digital mobile radio. It's a new and upcoming, well, it's not new, but it's certainly upcoming, very popular, probably the most popular digital voice mode right now. So it's also an FM radio. So very much like D-Star or C4FM from Yaesu. It's one of the competitors there. And then here's just two examples of, this is a tri-band handy-talkie that does D-Star and APRS and GPS. This is a quad band radio that does APRS and GPRS. And for any radio that you buy, I recommend the, what are these things called? The Nifty guides, which are a shortened version. There's no rambling like in a lot of manuals. We just have, there's a lot of fluff in manuals.
Yeah.
This is just, it's just the steps. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 to do a task. So I recommend that if you buy a radio, you buy the nifty guide for that radio. And these are all the radios that you see here, including what's in the box.
Okay.
There's a nifty guide for. So if I don't remember how to program this radio real quickly and I need to change something, I can reference that, and it's just literally step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4.
That's nice.
And it's done. And then what's back there? This is a roll-up J-pole antenna. So one of the limitations of handy talkies is the stock antenna that it comes with, right? So this one is the stock antenna for that. It's short, it's clumsy. You can get aftermarket antennas that add some gain to the signal, and longer usually better for antennas, usually. Right, so if you have a handy talkie and you're finding that your stock antenna isn't working well, you can get one of these roll-up J-poles and you literally unroll it, tie a rock to one end or something to the other end, and toss it up in the tree. I'm not going to unroll the whole thing, but a little carabiner I would tie like a fishing weight to and throw it up over a tree. So I get it up 30 feet, and then it just hangs down, and I attach that to my radio or to my power amplifier, and you have an antenna that goes up 30 feet as opposed to that. So like if you're at a command post in a CERT scenario, a roll-up J-pole is perfect. Or if you have a mast, you can just duct tape the top of this to the mast and put the mast up. And then you have a much better antenna. These are pre-made, $30 on eBay or Amazon, and you can buy the material, and in one of those books there's going to be instructions on how to build it.
You use a flagpole too.
Absolutely, whatever. And then this Go kit is sort of my, it's my wife. It's changed several times over the last 2 years. Right now, I can do every frequency, every mode. Literally, every frequency, every mode. Throw something out there and I bet you I can do it. So, in conjunction with some cables that are hooked up to different radios out to a laptop, which I didn't bring tonight. This is a dual band UHF, VHF. It has built-in GPS, but because it's in this box with metal enclosures, I can't get the GPS signal, so I added an external GPS. This one's very sensitive, so it picks up GPS even in hardened buildings and stuff, so that just plugs in right there. With GPS, I can do APRS. You talked about APRS for the balloon tracking. So if, Delmarva Search and Rescue uses APRS, for instance, when they send out a team, their radios are all enabled with APRS, or they have little clip-on things for their backpacks that are APRS enabled. So when they sit at command and they send team A this way and team B this way and team C that way, they know where everybody is just by looking at their computer screen. And they can tell you, your team A lead, you're drifting off course, you need to, look at your compass, you're going the wrong way, that kind of stuff. This radio is the Icon 7300, and it is HF and 6 meters, and I use that for all of my digital mode stuff. So if you're not familiar with digital modes, JT65, JT9, a new mode called FT8 sort of has my heart beating fast these days. It's just a quick exchange of information. It's not, you're not picking up a microphone and talking to anybody. It's literally just, hi, KM4HR, CQ, KM4HRR, and I send that out a couple times. People respond, and the software that's on the laptop automatically finishes the QSO, so it's like 5 exchanges, and then it just logs it in the logbook, and it's just fun. And for emergency stuff, you can use programs like FLDigi, where you can attach the IC213 forms or the radiogram forms or any of the ICS forms. They're all built into the software. Literally say, attach this form. We have a thing in Virginia called WinLink Wednesday you may have heard of. WinLink is a HF and VHF based email protocol for radios. Literally an email over the radio.
So a deaf person could use that. That would be the, out of all this stuff, that would be the only thing a deaf person could use.
Well, there are features in both of these radios. Well, yeah, okay, I'm thinking blind, deaf, because of the screen you mean.
Well, you said it's digital. It uses a computer to fill in. Does it receive?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay, I got you. I follow. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. There are features on this radio and on this radio that would enable a deaf person to be, deaf person to be able to use it as well. There are attachments that you, like external vibration attachments through accessory ports in the back that they can put like under their leg or in their lap or in their shirt. So they have some strap-on things that work like that as well. That Morse code through vibration. I've never seen it work, but I've seen videos of it, but I've never seen it in person. And another cool thing about this particular radio is you can, I gotta get down in front of it to figure it out. You can call up this big, huge, I don't have an antenna hooked up, but the band scope on here is really cool because you can see the signals. So instead of having headphones on or just listening, you can actually see the signals and then you can dial to that signal.
Wow, that thing is really cool.
And this is a pretty newfangled software-defined radio that's kind of driving all the hams crazy these days. It's a pretty nice little device. And this has been a labor of love. The top shelf is all power distribution. You can kind of peek in there and see, but I should have done a better job. And I do have pictures and we can post them on the web. It goes from the power supply to that new Epic power gate and then out to a distribution block. And then based on the equipment that it's attached to on the distribution block, fuses based on the amperage of each device. So this has a pretty high amperage fuse, this has a medium amperage fuse, this stuff up here has very low, like 1 amp type fuses. So it's all protected with fuses.
Did that cost more than $150, the whole setup?
Oh yeah, but it did.
Yes.
Yeah, you probably have to add at least one more zero on there, at least, if not a couple of them.
I'm not going to say how much it cost.
Is your wife still talking to you?
What way?
Oh, never mind.
And that's really it for this. That is all I have.
Power conditioning coming in before you hit DC?
No.
None?
No.
But you're attached to,
So the only
like say you'd be attached to generators that
correct.
fluctuate.
So everything inside the box is bonded together and grounded.
Okay.
And there's a bus bar in the back that goes to house ground at home plus antenna ground at home. Everything in my system is completely bonded and grounded, and that's a new discovery based on a class that we're having at Vienna Wireless Society called Bonding and Grounding. Very important to bond and ground your station. I noticed immediately, just from bonding the RF layer here, bonding is putting a strap between these two so that chassis are common. The waterfall display just cleared right up, all the noise went away, and I saw much stronger signals. And then when I grounded and bonded the entire box, it got even better. The next project for RF interference is to wrap the top shelf in a cloth that is RF and microwave resistant, and then wrap with a sticky substance the entire inside of the box to make it a Faraday cage. So I don't have to store it in a special way. It's already going to be a Faraday cage. So as long as I have the front and the top cover on, if we get an EMP attack, my radio should still work.
But nobody else's will.
Right. Correct. I will be talking to myself.
There's two
Yes.
sets. There's old two sets still around.
And then the other thing that I've been using this group is I recently started volunteering for Army Mars, which is military affiliate radio systems services, and we do a lot of digital message passing and things like that.
You said Mars grams, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember getting one once.
Yep. Now that's really all I have.
Moving on, moving down.
Moving on, we were talking about QSL cards. This is a collection of QSL cards. You can see this one was hand drawn. These are, some of them are printed. They're all personalized, and it's kind of like a souvenir that you talk to this person. Now that we've gone electronically, these are not used as much. This used to confirm all the contacts you made. Whenever you did it, you would send one of these out. And if you notice this stamp right there, it's a 2-cent stamp. So that's been in the book for a while. So all of these are different.
How long has it been in the book?
Before zip
What do
codes,
you
because it
think?
doesn't have one on there.
50 years.
So basically, it's a business card.
Yeah, right, exactly right, yeah, that's right. So, anyway, this, some people still do it, a lot of people just do it electronically.
Did you get one from every state?
Not yet. There's a couple of them like North Dakota that they only come out on when the sun shines once in a while.
I get cards from FTA contacts.
Oh, on the FTA, do you?
Yeah.
This is what the payload looks like. This is not the payload box that I was looking for, but this is the size that it is. Some of our people get their meds and this ice chest, they're shipped like that. They make really nice containers because they are in fact lightweight, but they're also maintain the temperature too. So we don't, one of the problems was we had a camera, and then when the camera went up, it got cold, and then the lens frosted up, and we didn't get any pictures back. So we changed things around a little bit. So
How do you keep the camera from breaking?
well, it's just, let's see if
Pack
this,
it properly.
it just has the foam on it. I'm not sure this is empty. One of the other ones that over there in that box, it has just foam in there, and you just take the foam and then you just take a knife and cut it out and push the camera in. So it's pretty solid in there. It doesn't. We had one that when we launched it, there was a gust of wind that picked it up and it took it across the parking lot. It wasn't climbing fast enough and it crashed into a dumpster. Bang, and then of course the dumpster released it and then it went up. And we couldn't check it or anything till we got it back. But it survived that without any problem. So let's put that over here. Now here, see what the balloon feels like. You can see how heavy it is. And of course then it's just kind of squishy. And it just gets thinner and thinner. It gets really cold. Of course, you can imagine how cold it is up there at 20 miles.
It feels like almost like the gloves that you would wear. Or something.
Well, yeah, it probably there's a lot of similarity between them. Here's what our parachute looks like.
That's
This
cool.
hooks onto the line that goes up to the balloon, and then this part of it here hooks onto the payload, so it goes like this. And as long as it's going up, it's just like this. And when it starts back down initially, it's just like this until there's enough wind in there, or enough air, and then it causes it to pop out. And it just brings it down. We adjust it by these lines right here, so it comes down about 1,000 feet.
So I would take it that you would have to do this on a fairly windless day.
Oh, no, you just let her go. I mean, it goes up and gets in the jet stream. You can see the trace on the maps that we have. That you just see it, and you can see how fast it's moving. Sometimes it turns around and it comes back on itself, and then it goes again. Yeah, it's not in the jet stream more than, I'm going to say maybe 2 or 3 minutes for the altitude that the aircraft would be flying, because it's going 1,000 feet a minute, and so if you had 5 minutes, and that's 5,000 feet. That's quite
Have you ever
a
landed in the Atlantic? I mean, are we far enough away from that?
we have never we almost put one in the Atlantic, but there was a radio club in California, and they spent a lot of time on this project, and they launched it from California. It went all across the United States, across the Atlantic Ocean, and I forget the country that it landed in, but it finally got over there. And they were able to control it by releasing a ballast that they had on there so that they could maintain it. If it starts to collapse or something, they had some kind of a control. And then when it landed in this foreign country, then they had to get a big wad of money and go over there and get it back. Which they did. They were able to recover it. So it was a successful, eventually successful operation.
Do you have to talk to the FAA or anything about before putting these things out?
Yes and no. We always did, because then they would put a NOTAM, notice to airmen, out on the circuit for all the pilots get access to that. But because of the size of it and the weight of it, there is not a requirement that the FAA is notified before we launch it, because they measure how much it weighs and then the widest area on here, the numbers, square inches.
I think it would still do a number on a jet engine if it got sucked in.
They throw frozen birds in there. I don't know. They don't, there is not that requirement. And we've never had a problem with it. We almost landed at National Airport.
Are you, yeah, speaking of landing, are you concerned about popping somebody in the head?
No.
Heck with it?
I've watched
Usually hits trees according to this.
It's all for science.
Yeah, I've watched them come down. We launched one. This was when I first got started in the club, and I lived over there near the power lines there in downtown Vienna. And we built this and put it all together and assembled it and tested it in the residential part of downtown Vienna, someplace near A Street and First Avenue or something, you know, it's just right in the middle. And so we took it all the way out to Strasbourg and launched it in Strasbourg near Front Royal. Launched it and came over, and by golly, it went and landed a block from the house that it was assembled. And I watched it come down. I was tracking it in the house, and I said, my gosh, that's coming right here. So I went out in the backyard, and I could see it coming in. You can see this right there. And it just kind of circled around like that and landed in the top of a tree, of course. But it was right downtown Vienna. I guess if that hits, I'm not going to speculate. Okay. I'm going to say it's safe.
All right.
It's soft. Now, Brendan has a HT down there. This is the, what I call the hidden transmitter. This is the size of it, runs on 2 little coin cells right here. And we hide these out in the trees, in the park, in the woods, in the forest. It's like electronic orienteering. There's the call sign. K4HTA.
So that's transmitting live right now.
Yes, yeah, you're hearing this on that radio right there.
Is this a fox and hound exercise? Oh, okay, that's what that is? All right.
Yeah, so these are just, you just take them with a wire tie or something, just get them up on the tree. So it goes, and you'll hear the call sign, and then after the call sign, you'll hear some letters, and that identifies the uniqueness of this when you would, the other one in the box, when you would compare this with its companion, which would have a different suffix on it. So it sends the radio call sign, and then it sends a different.
How far does it transmit?
About 400 yards. But you can change the antenna on here. You can string this out, and you can increase the distance. But you know, you don't want to.
No, not if
you don't want to walk
playing
too far in between the trees and everything. So that's the Handbook. I mean, here's the Handbook. This is the rig. This is the radio that I was telling you about that went in the Altoids box. That's that blue wire there. Hook it up to an antenna, and then you just throw it up in the tree. And then this is the key. You can, if you have good hearing, you can hear it. Sometimes the frequency is so high that us older folks can't hear it, but if you can hear it, then you're young. Pardon me?
Or haven't killed that frequency.
Oh yeah, right, yeah.
Look in that bag.
And that this will plug into there. And this is the other telegraph key that we had a demo on there. And, so if you hit one side of this series of dits, hit the other side, and then you just make a combination.
Back and forth?
Yeah, right. So if I was going to spell storage, S-T-O-R, and so just by moving your hand back and forth and putting together these combinations of dits and dahs, send anything anywhere. And this is gets you through a lot noisier atmosphere than with voice, because with voice you have a lot of frequency range, a lot of fluctuation. This is just a dit and a dah, and you can get it farther, and it's easier to copy this. Probably wouldn't use it on a CERT exercise, but if you were hunting down this, where this thing is, you want to be able to recognize the code that's on it. So it's part of it. Is it anything that's going to be directly associated with CERT? Probably not. But it's just one more check mark on your list of skills that you have. Just being able to hear, if you can tell the difference between a dit and a daw, you've advanced somewhat. This is called a direction finding antenna, and we hook this up to the handy talkie. So you take this antenna lead, put it on here, and you listen. You have earphones on or something, and you listen, and you're looking for the strongest signal, and you move it around, and that's how you chase these things down. This is out in the field, and you're just trying to get by it, and then you can hear the noise, not the noise, you can hear the information, the data come through. You're louder, softer, and you're just tuning it like that until you get it, and you walk closer, and you just keep taking these checks with it, and that'll lead you to it. And that's the
You
end
had
of it.
a picture of something like that in a tree when you said the satellite was coming over.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, you would track it. You put it on here. This increases the gain of your antenna, and you would just start tracing. You can do it by hand and just track it. And if you go too fast, the signal will drop, and you just wait there until the signal comes back up, and then you can continue on with it, and just keeps going.
Pete, is that a commercial antenna?
No, it's not. It's one that the club made out of a, I'm going to say, used to be 114-inch measuring stick. So, yeah, and it's nice because these just tuck right back inside here, and then it's a lot smaller. It's supposed to tuck back inside.
Little PVC and